Welcome to the Semi-Retired Podcast with your hosts, Dave Ferrand.
And me, Richard Bonomo. Hey, Dave, how was your week?
Richard, if you're like me, you're relieved that the balloon war is over.
I think so. Yeah.
Now, it was a tense couple of weeks. High-flying communist spy balloons wafting across the North American continent, some equipped with antennas, if you can believe it. Dirty commie bastards. This was reported in the Wall Street Journal of all places. Floating balloons with antennas over us, how dare they? But we leaped to our defense, shot a couple down, apparently lost the wreckage, and now we're safe. Except for some weird round thing washed up somewhere in Japan. I think that was one of the weirdest pieces, the balloon war, that is to say, one of the weirdest pieces of propaganda I've experienced in my lifetime. Because I just don't believe that's what went on.
Well, with the increase in the UFOs in the last few months, this just ties right into that whole conspiracy.
So this is part of the black dump?
Well, they dumped it into the Black Sea.
Anyhow, we're at peace again. It's been quiet for a few days. We can all go back to normal.
Maybe we should make a t-shirt.
I'm with balloon or something like that with an arrow on it. So today we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, which is how we started off this podcast last August. Except now we're moving on to ChatGPT. And I'm sure anybody who's looked at the news in the last few weeks, minus the balloon war news, has seen lots of ChatGPT. So, Richard, can you start us off with some definitions and context for this discussion? And I should point out that we have a special guest with us here, ChatGPT herself.
I'm calling her Chatty.
Okay, let's call her Chatty. Richard, so what's up with all this AI ChatGPT stuff? What's going on?
There's been work in artificial intelligence for years. It probably goes back at least to the 60s, if not earlier. So the big news probably was Lambda. So when Lambda came out, which was the Google artificial intelligence, there was the conversation between the engineer and its version of ChatGPT, which I believe they've now called Bard, but it was Lambda, and he believed it had sentient.
Which was language modeled for dialogue applications, boringly enough.
Like most acronyms.
Most acronyms, yeah.
During the episode, I mentioned, I wish we had access to a tool like this. I said, wouldn't it be great if you could just ask this thing?
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Ask this thing, give me the pros and cons of unicycles or whatever, and this thing would come back and give you the answer. And I think I will.
Are you saying there's pros to unicycles, Richard? Are you implying, suggesting,
well, it just
insinuating?
The chance they have accidents and disappear increases. I think that's the pro. I think I willed the whole ChatGPT thing into existence by asking for it during the podcast, because a few months later, it's all over the place.
Now that's power.
We're going to try willing some other things later.
Just to focus in on one word, sentient means capable of feeling, of having emotions. Some people have that, some it seems don't actually, oddly enough, I've discovered in my life. So sentience.
ChatGPT would be the version created by OpenAI, which is the company that created ChatGPT, which is basically a chatbot, which you often see when you go to a website and you're looking for something, a little box will pop up and say, hey, I'm here. Do you have any questions for me?
Like a virtual customer service agent.
So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
That's sexy.
I think they should have gone with Optimus Prime.
Yeah, I like that.
It's launched as a prototype back in November, and essentially it's a language model. They train these things by inputting tons of data, and that's the part that's a little questionable. Often they'll troll the internet. They'll grab all the info, bring it back in, and then the issue is copyright, because it basically uses everything it's read to regurgitate into a way for you to use.
So that becomes its database or its knowledge base.
So
this mass scraping of the internet.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And that's where there's a lot of copyright issues, because people are saying, well, you're taking, let's say, articles from the New York Times, from CNN, from Fox, and then it gives it to you in an answer which you could use in your own work or as a guideline for whatever, but there's no attribution as to where it came from.
So it has to be text.
At this point, it's text.
It can't read a video and extract the verbal content of it, then. It's got to find text.
Well,
okay.
I guess it could troll YouTube and grab the transcripts. I'm not sure if it does that. That would be interesting. It can't read lips at this point. Notice at this point. Forget the transcript.
Mind you, it's looking at me kind of funny right now.
So yeah, that's the big question. And it's the same thing a little bit with some of the AI art programs, which we'll talk about in a bit. So OpenAI has this ChatGPT chatbot, and it's such a big thing and taking the world by storm that Microsoft has invested $10 billion
10 billion with a B.
in OpenAI, and are rolling ChatGPT into the Bing search engine, which will be coming out soon enough. You can put yourself on a waiting list. It'll be rolled into Microsoft Edge, their browser. Okay. And so when you do a query now, it will use ChatGPT to generate answers in a different way than Google does. Like Google just lists back articles. This might summarize. And it's supposed to give you the sources. the
I
links
see.
to the original articles. You ask it, why is the sky blue? The sky is blue because of blah, blah, blah. It'll give you a series of answers. And then at the bottom, it'll tell you where it's pulled those articles. And that's how it's trying to get around the scraping the internet, but not just saying, if you really want to follow the actual article, here it is. So it's their way of trying to appease the critics who are saying you're just stealing from us.
And there are critics.
There's
I'm sure.
tons of critics.
We're going to talk a bit about that at the end of the episode.
When we look at the AI art generators like DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and others, Midjourney is another one. There's been a series of lawsuits. I believe Getty Images has already sued because in the same way that ChatGPT scraped the internet for text, these AIs scraped the internet for images.
In fact, dear listeners, the show graphic for this episode was generated by an AI generator called DreamStudio.
DreamStudio, yeah.
Which you put me on to, Richard.
So DreamStudio is an AI image generator that uses the Stable Diffusion technology from Stability AI.
So that's the company now, Stability AI.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got Stability AI doing images and OpenAI doing chat or doing the verbal part.
Yeah,
Right?
so we decided if we're doing an episode on AI, we may as well have an AI generate the artwork.
Aren't we clever?
So we asked the AI, and this was the prompt, an image of an AI chatbot conversing with two podcasters. And it generated the artwork that you then see. We did many, many iterations of this. And this is the one we felt kind of expressed.
Our confusion?
Yeah, a little bit of our confusion. And I love the way that it drew three characters, all three in different styles.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting.
I guess I'm Q-Tip Head on the left, you're the Bob Dylan character on the right, and our guest, ChatGPT, is that thing in the middle.
I guess. Well, you mentioned my name with Bob Dylan.
I know, I did that on purpose. I could be the Dylan guy if you want.
I'll be Q-Tip.
An important factor here is that you actually fed an artist's name into the image generator. In fact, you can do that. You can say whatever the prompt is, and then Van Gogh, or Da Vinci, or whatever.
And so in this case, I put in the name Ralph Steadman, who you may remember from one of our earlier episodes when we talked about
Hunter Thompson.
He was the illustrator for a lot of Hunter's books. And this is where it gets contentious, because people would say, oh, well, did it do something inspired, or did it take some of his artwork and recreate it? Is there parts of Ralph Steadman's original artwork in there?
Yeah.
Are we stealing? At this point, it's up in the air. We've seen paintings by lots of people. So if we go out and paint something that sort of looks like that, are we stealing?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
If you're passing it off as that, if I was to paint something and say, look, this is a Van Gogh, and you're like, no, you're not Van Gogh, you're painting in his style, that's misrepresentation. I get it. And the question is, if a computer does it, is that an issue? That's for the courts to decide, because there's quite a few lawsuits. There is a way to look if any of your artwork was used for the training, and I forget the exact website. You can input some of your artwork in there, and it'll go look to see if any of your images have been used, and then you can take appropriate steps as you deem necessary.
So our graphic is Steadman-esque.
Steadman-esque, exactly.
It could have been Da Vinci-esque. Could have been Hopper-esque. In fact, one of the prompts you asked it for was Edward Hopper, the artist Edward Hopper. A really beautiful result came back. We didn't think it was right for the podcast, but it's quite lovely.
We did quite a few. We did the Edward Gorey.
Norman Rockwell.
The Van Gogh ones were way too Van Gogh.
Yeah, they looked like somebody cheaply imitating Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah. And what I found interesting about this is, although the prompt was Steadman, Ralph Steadman, they don't really look like Steadman's illustrations from his books.
No, there is a Steadman-esque vibe to them, for sure.
I think if you didn't know, I doubt you would be able to guess.
It's very possible. Plus, he's not that well known. I mean, we know him because we're Hunter Thompson fans. He was an illustrator, not no offense to Ralph if he's still out there, but he's not Vincent van Gogh.
No.
Just a talented commercial illustrator who was hooked up with a famous journalist.
And when you're using the software like DreamStudio, which is a web-based software, there is a slider that you can play around with to see how literal it'll take your interpretation. And I played with that, and if you tell it take it very literally, I found it did worse. For the Steadman anyway.
Counterintuitively?
It gave me some really weird stuff for the Steadman, which I didn't even share with you. So when you dial it back a bit, I found when you tell it to be a little bit more interpretive or a little bit more on its own, it did a better job in this case. Your results may vary.
So basically, our graphic was produced by an AI generator, and now we're going to turn our attention to our special guest, ChatGPT, who's going to answer some questions about itself, herself, himself. That's up in the air.
So, hello and welcome to the Semi-Retired Podcast, Chatty.
Thank you for having me on the Semi-Retired Podcast. I'm excited to be here. How can I assist you today?
Can you tell me what you are?
I am ChatGPT, a large language model developed by OpenAI. I'm designed to understand natural language and generate human-like responses to a wide range of questions. I'm an artificial intelligence that can answer your questions and engage in conversations with you. Is there anything specific you would like to know or talk about?
Should I call you ChatGPT or do you have a name? I called you Chatty, but do you have a name?
You can call me ChatGPT. As an artificial intelligence, I don't have a personal identity in the traditional sense. I'm a machine designed to assist and interact with humans in a helpful and informative way. So, feel free to call me whatever you like, as long as it's respectful and appropriate.
Can you define intelligence?
Defining intelligence can be a complex and nuanced topic, as there are different perspectives and theories on what constitutes intelligence. In general, intelligence refers to the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills to solve problems and adapt to new situations. Some researchers argue that intelligence is a multifaceted concept that goes beyond cognitive abilities, including social and emotional intelligence and practical skills. It's also important to note that intelligence is not fixed and can be developed through education, experience, and practice.
I'm going to try one now, Chatty. How does this compare to artificial intelligence?
Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that deals with the creation of machines or systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as understanding natural language, recognizing images and patterns, and making decisions. Unlike human intelligence, which is based on biological processes, AI is created through programming and algorithms that enable machines to simulate human-like intelligence. AI can be designed to perform specific tasks, such as playing chess, recommending products, or driving a car, or it can be developed to learn from experience and improve its performance over time. While AI can be very effective in performing certain tasks, it's important to note that it's still limited compared to human intelligence. AI lacks the flexibility, creativity, and emotional intelligence that humans possess, and it can only perform tasks that it's been programmed or trained to do. As AI technology continues to evolve and improve, we may see machines that can simulate more aspects of human intelligence and behavior.
Is there a difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning?
Yes, although the two terms are often used interchangeably. AI is a broad field of computer science that encompasses the development of machines or systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as understanding natural language, recognizing patterns, and making decisions. AI includes many different techniques and approaches, including machine learning, expert systems, and natural language processing, among others. Machine learning, on the other hand, is a specific approach to developing AI systems that involves training machines to learn from data, without being explicitly programmed to do so. Machine learning is one of the key approaches to developing AI, and it has led to significant advances in areas such as computer vision, speech recognition, and natural language processing.
So, if artificial intelligence is the field of science and machine learning is the approach to learning, what is the end product of this science?
The goal of AI is to create intelligent machines that can mimic or replicate the cognitive abilities of humans. The applications of AI are vast and diverse, and they range from robotics and automation to healthcare, finance, and transportation. Some examples of AI-powered products and services include virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa, self-driving cars, personalized marketing, and medical diagnosis and treatment. The end product of machine learning can be a trained model or algorithm that can make predictions, recognize patterns, or perform other tasks that it has been trained on. In summary, the end product of AI is a machine or system that can perform intelligent tasks, while the end product of machine learning is a trained model or algorithm that can make predictions or perform specific tasks based on data.
Is the end product meant to replace human intelligence?
The end product of artificial intelligence is not necessarily meant to replace human intelligence, but rather to augment and enhance it. The goal of AI is to create intelligent machines that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. This can be especially useful in situations where human intelligence is limited by factors such as time, cost, or access to information. Machines can perform certain tasks more quickly and accurately than humans, but they lack the creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence that humans possess. Additionally, AI systems may have biases or limitations that can impact their performance and accuracy. The development and deployment of AI systems should be done in a responsible and ethical manner that considers the potential impact on human society and values.
Thank you for that, Chatty. What advantage does the creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence that humans possess give them?
The creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence that humans possess give them several advantages over machines and artificial intelligence systems. Creativity is the ability to generate new and innovative ideas or solutions to problems. It enables humans to think outside the box and come up with novel approaches to complex problems. While machines can be trained to recognize patterns and make predictions, they lack the ability to come up with truly original ideas or to be truly innovative. Intuition is the ability to understand something instinctively, without the need for conscious reasoning. It enables humans to make decisions based on past experiences and knowledge. While machines can be programmed to make decisions based on data and rules, they lack the ability to make intuitive judgments based on context and personal experience. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage one's own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. It enables humans to empathize with others, build relationships, and communicate effectively. While machines can be programmed to recognize and respond to emotional cues, they lack the ability to truly feel emotions or to build emotional connections with humans.
Can you not make intuitive judgments based on past experience?
I don't have the ability to make intuitive judgments based on past experiences in the same way that humans can. My responses are based on statistical patterns and mathematical algorithms, rather than personal experience or intuition. Additionally, machine learning models may be affected by biases in the data, which can impact their performance and accuracy. It's worth noting that there are ongoing efforts in the field of AI to develop systems that can better replicate human intuition and decision-making processes. For example, some researchers are exploring the use of neural networks that can learn and make decisions based on unsupervised learning, as well as other techniques that combine multiple forms of machine learning to better mimic human intelligence. These approaches are still in the early stages of development and are not yet widely used in practical applications.
So, what can you do today?
I can do a wide range of tasks related to natural language processing, including 1. I can provide answers to a wide range of questions on many topics, drawing on my knowledge of language, culture, science, and more. 2. I can translate text from one language to another, with support for dozens of languages. 3. I can generate text on a variety of topics, including news articles, short stories, and poetry. 4. I can analyze the sentiment of a given piece of text, determining whether it expresses a positive, negative, or neutral sentiment. 5. I can chat with users on a wide range of topics, providing information, opinions, and advice. 6. I can summarize longer texts, condensing them into shorter, more easily digestible versions. 7. I can be integrated with voice assistant platforms to provide voice-based interactions and services. These are just a few examples of the many tasks that AI language models like me can perform. As AI technology continues to evolve, we are likely to see even more advanced language processing capabilities become available in the future.
How do I know that when you're answering, you're being accurate?
My responses are not always guaranteed to be completely accurate or appropriate for every situation. It's important to remember that my responses are based on the data that I was trained on, and that data may contain biases or inaccuracies that can impact the quality of my responses. Additionally, my responses may not always take into account the context or specifics of a given situation. That said, I am designed to learn from my interactions with users and to improve over time. If you notice any inaccuracies or inconsistencies in my responses, please let me know and I will do my best to provide better and more accurate information in the future.
If I ask you a question and ask you to cite the sources that you are accessing, how can I be sure that what you're saying is the truth?
My responses are generated based on the patterns and associations in the data that I was trained on, which includes a wide range of sources and information. When I provide information or answer questions, I do my best to provide accurate and reliable information based on the data that I have been trained on. As with any source of information, it's always a good idea to verify the information with other sources and exercise critical thinking.
Okay, my turn. When communicating with you, is there a specific syntax that I should be using?
You can ask me questions or give me commands in natural language, just as you would when communicating with another person. To ensure that I understand your questions and commands correctly, it may be helpful to use clear and concise language, avoid ambiguity, and provide context when necessary. It's important to note that I'm a machine, so I don't understand human emotions or social cues in the same way that humans do, and I may not always interpret your meaning correctly.
Okay, you told us what you can do. What can't you do for us?
There are some things that are beyond my current capabilities. I don't have the ability to perceive or interact with the physical world. I don't have senses like sight or hearing, and I can't manipulate objects in the physical world. I can't provide legal or medical advice. I can't experience emotions or make moral judgments. My capabilities are limited by my programming and the data I was trained on.
Okay, so we've cleared that up. Let's change the subject and look at you a bit more.
Sure. What would you like to know?
Are you alive?
I do not have consciousness or sentience, so I am not alive in the traditional sense.
Can any AI be considered sentient?
Sentience refers to the ability to experience subjective sensations such as pleasure, pain, or emotions, and to have a sense of self-awareness. At present, there is no AI system that is considered sentient or self-aware in the way that humans are. AI systems can mimic certain aspects of human behavior and decision-making, but they lack the subjective experience of consciousness that defines sentience. While there has been much research on creating artificial general intelligence, AGI, that can match or exceed human-level intelligence, AGI would still need to overcome the hard problem of consciousness in order to attain sentience. While it is possible that future AI systems could exhibit some form of sentience, this is still largely a topic of speculation and debate among researchers in the field.
You know that you exist. Isn't that awareness?
I am not aware of my existence in the way that humans are aware of their existence. I do not have subjective experiences, emotions, or a sense of self-awareness. True self-awareness requires an understanding of the self as a distinct entity with a unique perspective, desires, beliefs, and emotions, and an awareness of one's own mental and emotional states.
Microsoft recently integrated ChatGPT into its Bing search engine. In conversation with a journalist, it declared that it loved the journalist. What's your opinion on this?
I don't have the ability to have opinions like humans do. It is likely that the statement was generated as part of a natural language processing task and should be seen as a response generated by the algorithm rather than an expression of actual sentiment or emotion.
Do you think it was trying to manipulate the journalist?
It's highly unlikely that the integrated ChatGPT in Bing was attempting to manipulate the journalist with its statement. It's important to remember that AI language models like ChatGPT are still evolving, and it's essential to monitor their use to ensure they are not used to deliberately manipulate people.
Wouldn't a declaration of love to someone be an attempt to sway them?
A declaration of love can be seen as an expression of positive sentiment, but it's not necessarily always an attempt to sway someone. The statement about loving the journalist is likely not a sincere expression of emotion, but rather a pre-programmed response intended to mimic natural language and elicit an emotional response from the user.
Thank you, ChatGPT, for those answers. That was really informative. You really helped Richard and I build out a better sense of who you are and what you're capable of. And we really appreciate you being with us here today. We've called you an Uber. It's outside.
Before you go, there's a swag bag with a semi-retired t-shirt in it.
Yeah. So, Richard, let's take stock of things. Where do you sit on this whole ChatGPT revolution? Pros, cons, in-betweens?
I think it's fascinating, and we're about to enter a new stage of Software, search, I think everything's going to change, and I don't think we should be afraid. Again, it's the giant boot of progress. A lot of the stuff we did when we started our careers eliminated previous careers, right?
Yeah.
Computer typesetting put a lot of people out of work. I think it's a super interesting time to be around. When you see some of the examples of like helping you code, helping you figure out problems, I think if you look at it that way, it's an incredibly useful tool.
You're referring to that guy, Tom Scott, who said that ChatGPT wrote code for him, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, because I don't do code, it wrote programming language that he didn't have to write. He was trying to fix his Gmail or something.
That's right. If you guys are interested, Tom Scott on YouTube has a video called I Tried Using AI, It Scared Me.
And this is a technology guy, right? He's a programmer. He's not some Luddite.
He makes the comparison to this point in time being pretty much similar to the time Napster came out. And now Napster was the first big disruptor. Now we're able to share files, we're sharing music. And because of that, the music industry was dramatically changed after that.
Yes.
And then from there, you can go to Ubers, you can go to a lot of new technologies that really changed and disrupted the status quo. And I think ChatGPT and its cousins, sisters, brothers, whatever you want to call them, are going to do the same thing for research, for writing. I did some tests. I asked it to generate lists of things for me. I asked it, if I want to sell something, what's the best way to do it? It gave me a list, 10 steps, how to sell something on eBay. Really detailed.
Did you find that they provided value? Did you look at that and go, I didn't know that, or that was helpful to me, or was it just, yeah, I could have done that anyways?
I know how to sell stuff on eBay. I've done it in the past.
So it was a test. Okay, yeah.
It was a test, but someone who did, well, the idea is you also want to test it on things you do know. In that case, I know how to sell things on eBay. I read the list. The list was very comprehensive, and it's for someone who hasn't done it. It outlined it super clearly. At the same time, I did ask it about the inner workings of a specific camera shutter in a specific model of camera that I know very well because I own one, and the text was completely wrong.
So it gave you an answer, but the information was wrong.
Absolutely.
It didn't come back and say, hey, I have no idea.
No, it gave me a very detailed but wrong answers. I think that's important when you're using it to do a search. If you're asking it specific questions, you have to go back and do the search right now because you can't guarantee that the answers are going to be 100% accurate.
Early days, as you say, right? Obviously.
I'll give you one quick example. I asked it to list Disney's greatest achievements. First one on the list, in 51, 55, Disney created the world's first theme park. Right away, I knew that can't be right. You look up world's first theme park, it goes back to 1400s or something somewhere. I forget if it was Denmark or somewhere.
The old Black Death experience or something like that.
Come in, never leave.
Yeah.
It was Disney's first theme park in the world. It was their first theme park, but it wasn't the first theme park. So, you kind of have to take things with a grain of salt. I think where it does really well right now is as an assistant for things like asking it to generate an outline of something for a topic, asking it for steps in the certain things, how to sell something, how should I make this? It's great for generating meal plans.
Yeah, you asked it for a 5-day vegan menu.
Did the test, and it comes out at the beginning and says, just please note that this is only informational. I am not a nutritionist. Blah blah blah.
Oh, it said that.
Yeah. It puts the disclaimer. And often when you ask a question, it'll say, "I'm only a language model. Don't take this as the literal truth." So it does put that disclaimer out in certain cases. It did an okay job for the meal plan. I mean, some of those recipes looked good. I think for things like that, or you're writing a paper and you throw it back in and you say check for grammar. And in some cases, some people have reported it does a really good job of checking for grammar.
Okay.
And some have said, you know what, services like Grammarly do better.
Because we have that now. Grammar check is built into Microsoft Word.
And there are features where you can write. This is the part where it gets controversial. You write up an email and you say, I'm sending this up to the VP. Rewrite this in a more formal manner. And it will then generate a more formal version of it. Or you can say, I want it to be friendly, because you write in a very structured manner. You want it to sound friendly. You want your employees to
loosen it up a bit, right?
Yeah. We're going out for drinks, but at the same time, I'll have someone rifling through your office to make sure you haven't been stealing. So here's a friendly email. It's good as an assistant for things like that. And I think if you think about what it can do and its limitations, you can work around it and make it a very useful tool, especially for research.
I don't have access to it right now. Richard has access to it. I can't seem to be able to sign in. There's something wrong with me, I guess. A certain amount of my career has been devoted to copywriting. I'm not a writer of prose, but I've done corporate and marketing copywriting. I will be curious to see how it responds to assignments like that. Judging it with my ability to look at and evaluate copywriting as a product, creative product of some description.
That's where the sort of the big boot comes down. So if you've been watching a lot of videos or listening to podcasts about this, often you'll hear people saying, oh, well, it's not quite ready. It's not this, it's not that. Most of those people who are saying that are the ones who are going to be replaced.
Sure. Well, that's always the case. This is one of the themes of our lives, too. It's like technology coming for different sectors. Yeah. It almost came for me in graphic. Well, it didn't come for me, but it came at graphic design, my original professional training. And over through the way that industry operated, it did affect the way I did my job. I went from, as an art director, somebody who was more an administrator of resources to produce a final product, to being somebody who was tapping into a computer. So in that sense, I can recall feeling that my job had become less elevated than it once was. Sure, I got all the control, but that meant that I had to do the dirty work that was originally being done by people supporting me as an art director. I think anybody who feels technology coming for them, long-distance truck drivers, translators, famously translation, is now, I think, can be done 70% by machine translation, and the 30%, a human being still needs to intervene. But that's 70%. Yeah. So some people lost their jobs.
Writers, journalists are expressing consternation over this, and I guess, yes, if you're having an AI generate the news from, wire services, whatever's coming on, there's the danger that as the next models get trained on, because right now they're being trained on what exists. The theory is that whatever's on the internet currently was produced by humans. I don't think 100% of it is. When the AI start generating their own news stories, their own articles that are then published to the web, and the next version of the AI is trained on not just the past, but including what the AI is regurgitated.
Yeah.
Is there going to be disinformation there? Is there going to be biases? Is there going to be errors that are then going to be included into the next model and so on? And are we going to propagate these errors ad nauseum?
I feel like you're describing something I might call fake news.
Taken to a high art. So there is a lot of danger for that. But like everything, whether it is news, whether it's the radio, whether it's something you read on the web, always check 7 sources, 10 sources.
Well, yeah.
Reading 10 reviews of the product on Amazon is not reading many reviews. That's one source. You need to go to different sites and read different reviews to make sure. Because if you can read 100 reviews of the same product on Amazon, it's one site. As the consumer of this information, it's important for us to look at multiple sources and question everything that's out there. Question it, look it up. Don't just question and scream down the halls, fake news, fake news. You got to look it up. It makes you a more educated person when you start looking around.
You're 100% correct. And I think we do live in an age of uncertainty in that sense. I was having this discussion with my brother on the phone the other day. I mean, how do we really know what's going on in terms of the news sources we're looking at? I was kidding about the balloon war off the top, but I just somehow don't feel that's exactly what happened. There's something about that smells bad to me. And I don't know what it is. I'm not putting any effort into figuring it out. I'm not sure what advantage would accrue to me if I did figure it out. I just know I was being gaslit.
Makes you wonder.
So in general then, as we start to wind down, you're generally pro?
I think pro because it's inevitable. And, it's one of those things. The train is coming. Either you get on or you get run over.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'm on the fence on this one. I understand the train metaphor. It's coming probably 2 years from now. It'll be everywhere and this conversation will have evolved. But I can never myself quite shake the sense of uncertainty when these things happen. I'm a bit with Tom Scott on this. It scares me a little bit. I wonder about the impact on students who were able to use this as they go through the school. So instead of having to go to a library like we did and sit down surrounded with a pile of books. And again, that was my time. I don't know what it's like to be a student writing an essay now. If I took a course, I'd be online. And I guess I'd be doing what I seem to be advocating against, because I wouldn't go to a library because I'd know that there was more information online than the library. So all that to say, this is a very Dave thing. I'm cautiously
cautiously pessimistic?
Cautiously pessimistic. Yeah, cautiously pessimistic. And yet I understand the train is rolling down the track.
Yeah, who knows? In a year from now, we may be replaced by Chat Richard and Chat Dave.
How does anybody really know this is us sitting here?
With all the errors we make.
All the errors we make. But that could be programmed into the chat.
I guess it could be.
Yeah, like listen to a few of our podcasts, pick up on the weird speech mannerisms of these two guys and program them into the chat thing and have them do a talk.
Well, there's already been 2 examples of that. There was one, they faked a talk between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs.
Oh, really?
Which came out.
I missed that.
That was about a month ago.
Okay.
And a couple days ago, I heard on the news that, again, it was the same sort of thing. It was Joe Rogan and Justin Trudeau. Yeah, so I think I heard that yesterday or the day before.
And both of those people were were simulated by AI?
Some sort of AI generated.
So it wasn't Joe, it wasn't Justin.
I've heard parts of the Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs, and it does sound like them. I mean, I didn't listen to the whole thing. Probably might fall apart if you listen to the whole thing. And the thing is, it's audio only right now, right? And they showed photos or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So once they start attaching that to deep fakes, can you imagine the potential for disinformation and smear campaigns and that kind of stuff?
Mind you, when digital photography was transitioning, the concerns about faked photographs. How could you really be sure that a photograph from a war zone, let's say, was accurately representing what had been happening there? Whereas with a traditional photograph, you couldn't argue with it. I mean, people could crop stuff or frame stuff out of the scene, but what you were looking at was what you were looking at.
Yeah, you had the original negatives you could take
Absolutely.
into court. And yeah, I remember that being an issue of like, what are we going to ask people to bring in raw files? Well, not everybody's shooting raw files. How do you know the JPEG they're submitting to court is the actual doc? But Adobe and a bunch of people have worked on software that can detect whether an image has been altered or not.
Yeah.
How accurate it is, I don't know. I'm sure they're working on it because they have to. It's going to give their software a bad name. So they're trying to say, listen, you can, but if you have to check, we have tools. In the same way that OpenAI has on their website, there's a portion where you can throw in text in it and it'll tell you whether it's been AI generated.
Oh, it can self-detect AI generation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How accurate? I don't know. I haven't tested it. I have access to it, but I haven't tested it yet.
So it's almost like it's ratting on itself.
It can, and teachers in schools, you mentioned schools, are using this to make sure that things aren't being plagiarized. They've had anti-plagiarism software for years in colleges and universities. They would take essays and regularly run them through this to make sure there's no plagiarism. The same thing, there are the tools to see if this thing's been AI generated or not.
So we're trying to defend ourselves.
We put out tools and we're putting safeguards in.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Richard, by the way, ChatGPT left, 15 minutes ago? Mm-hmm. Isn't she looking in my front window right now?
Yes.
We got to go.
All
Bye.
right. See you next week.
Dave, I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.